In a world enamored by Hollywood, its celebrities, their paradigms and ideals, is this where it's at? Join me each week as we discover the deeper meaning, an alternate spark to Hollywood's love, paparazzi, relationships, and empowerment. Yes, my friend, I am sparked by Hollywood. It was 2:00 p.m. on the eve of Yom Kippur, and the doctor said it plainly, "Ma'am, you're pregnant, and your fetus is stuck and growing in your left fallopian tube." The fetus was alive. It had a beating heart. The fallopian tube can burst at any moment, putting me in fatal danger. Of course, they needed to operate right away, and they needed to remove the fetus. My thoughts raced. Not going home for Yom Kippur? Not going home to be with my family? "Please," I begged the doctor. "I promise I'll come back tomorrow. I need to go home right now." I guess for some reason in my fogged mind, that question sounded reasonable. I tried to negotiate with the medical team, while my mind was just clouded with the unknown. "Sorry, ma'am," they said. "If you leave now, you may not survive this overnight." This was no longer my decision. It was being orchestrated from above. See, it was September 2016, on Erev Yom Kippur. I had been experiencing increasing pain over the past few weeks. The beginning stages weren't really alarming. As you know, we moms are pretty good at popping some Tylenol and putting our family's needs first, right? Dinner prep, bath time, child duties, homework, they all take the front burner. We put our pain last. But the pain was getting worse, and the bleeding too. See, a few weeks earlier, I had my monthly period. On time, everything seemed normal. But the bleeding didn't stop. 1 week passed, another week passed, and I understood definitely something is not the norm over here. There's another issue going on. Now, as a Jewish woman, I keep the laws of family purity on a monthly basis. Similar to what Matt Damon described in an interview that he and his wife created a 2-week on and 2-week off intimacy schedule in order to, in his words, keep our marriage alive, keep the spark going strong. As a Jewish woman, I'm blessed to have this exact paradigm exemplified in the Torah, which is my heritage, which identifies the same recipe as Matt. Intimacy for 2 weeks on approximately, and intimacy for 2 weeks off, built in to the woman's menstrual cycle. Because people ask me, well, how do you know when to start? How do you know when to stop? Following this recipe as it's directed and built into Judaism, it's very easy to implement as it is built into the woman's menstrual cycle. And this is what it looks like. The 3 steps of this quote-unquote time off is, number 1, 5 days of the woman menstruating. That's the first step. When she gets her period, that's when she and her husband stop any intimate connection. And in addition to that, step number 2, the 7 subsequent days where she ascertains that there's no menstrual flow, culminating with step number 3 in Judaism, which is the immersion in the mikveh. Now, someone who's Jewish will follow these laws as such. Someone who's not Jewish can easily follow the Matt Damon style of intentionally finding certain days of the month where she and her husband intentionally refrain from sexual intimacy. And when that time is over, when that time has ended, that's when the couple resumes intimacy with each other. So what might be the benefits here? Understanding that anything so good and satisfying as marital intimacy only remains so good when we take periodic breaks. Knowing the nature of man, the Torah creates that framework for our marriage to thrive and survive. How so? Take a break, it says. Reclaim your space. You'll find how much more you want your spouse physically and intimately as each day passes, and you can't just have them just yet. The gift that Judaism is giving us is really a buildup of healthy, loving emotions that are only to be expressed at the end of the 12-day break. I like to compare this to someone who has a champagne bottle in their hand and they give it a shake. The cork is screwed in tight and the person gives the bottle a shake, and then they give it a second shake, and a third shake. And someone walks into the room and says, you better not pop that cork because once you take it off, once it comes off, that bottle is going to explode. There's so much carbonation inside, it wants to be released. That's exactly the recipe that we're going for, my friends. When we have intentional amount of time during the month that we hold back from physical intimacy, and yet at the same time, we want that love, we want that attraction, we want that connection, but we say, hold on, I know this is so special, I know this is so unique, but I'm going to wait 5 days, 4 days, 3 days, until that moment that we have committed to that this time is over. And when this time is over and we're ready to spring back into each other's arms, that excitement will be just like popping off the top of the champagne bottle. The excitement will be so palpable because you've waited for something so special and unique as an intimate connection. My client Sarah explained that the love that she and her husband felt when they first got married was so strong. No one explained to her, though, that it might not be the same forever. No one explained to them that it may diminish to a point that they may actually resent each other. And no one explained, my friends, that they may even feel so alienated that they would actually sleep in separate rooms every night. So obviously, she longed to be back where they first started. She wanted to go back to that special time. He wanted to reclaim that love and intimacy. So they started therapy. But the therapy wasn't helping. After months of going, they were still kind of desperate. And that's when they started committing themselves to the 12-day separation every single month. Yes, it was new to them. Yes, they hadn't practiced it before, and to be honest, it seemed a little bizarre in the beginning. But they realized very quickly what a gift they were giving each other when they pulled apart every single month, physically, intimately, very much living together, very much communicating and working on their communication at the same time, but knowing that their intimacy is so special and it has to wait for a committed amount of time. And boy, did that reclaim their spark. So back to my story. My period had ended and I started counting the 7 clean days. So the 7 days subsequent to the 5 days of the period. Now, the 7 clean days is a proverbial term for 7 days ascertaining that no menstruation is flowing. Only when a woman in Judaism experiences or accomplishes those 7 clean days consecutively can she immerse in the mikveh and then resume intimacy with her husband. For me, the blood kept on flowing. The menstruation kept on coming. And I'm thinking, this is strange. Definitely not something that I've experienced before. But I was stuck and I was frustrated because I was not completing my 7 clean days. And therefore I was not able to go to the mikveh and I was not able to resume intimacy with my husband. Now, prior to this, a week earlier, I was concerned at that point and I went to my OBGYN. I expressed my situation to her. She heard me out. And what was her answer? Don't worry, bleeding is normal. It can happen to anyone. I see it all the time. There really is no issue here, according to the medical textbooks, she said. But if the bleeding bothers you and you really want it to stop, just take this birth control pill and you'll be fine. Oh, and the pain that you're experiencing? I don't see anything alarming about it. So, of course, hearing the doctor's prognosis, but knowing inside that there was a deeper issue, I politely passed up the birth control offer and I left the office. And hoping all the time that I'd be okay, but knowing deep down that I really wasn't. Fast track a week later, at the day before Yom Kippur, and the pain had really intensified. My husband happened to be out of town for a few days, a trip that he had planned long before. And I didn't think beforehand that the pain that I was having should or would cause me to ask him to cancel the trip. So I said, go, no worries, I'll be fine. Yet another story began to unfold very quickly. Because of the intensity of the pain that I was experiencing, I decided to drive myself to the ER just to get checked out. That night was Yom Kippur. I really wanted to be on the safe side, so I pick up the phone, I called my bubby, and I said, please, can you watch the kids at home? I have to go to the hospital just to get this checked out. I'm sure I'll be home pretty soon. So I got to the ER. They started me off with a blood test. and they asked me to take a seat and wait. Within a few moments, the doctor called me over and said matter-of-factly, "Ma'am, you're pregnant. About 8 to 10 weeks." I had a precious soul growing inside of me. It caused me to swell with pride and joy. I rubbed my belly with love and connected for a moment with this little soul that had been, unbeknownst to me, growing within. And then I thought, wait, how is this even possible? I just finished my period a few weeks ago. How could you have your period and be pregnant at the same time? That part was really confusing. I just didn't get it. The doctor told me that he was concerned because he didn't know the source of my spotting. As I said, I kept on bleeding, I kept on spotting, and he wanted to find out. So he sent me for an ultrasound. I called my husband, who was, as I mentioned earlier, he was out of town. I just needed to keep him posted. I needed to let him know what was going on, of course. And he was excited to learn that I was expecting, but nervous as I was because I still had an issue here. He told me that he was sending me hugs and love and to let him know how the ultrasound goes. It was during the ultrasound that they detected that the baby was resting in my fallopian tube and growing there. I was experiencing an ectopic pregnancy. Now it all started to make sense. During the ultrasound, they kept on asking me to hold my breath as they took images because they were trying to detect if the little fetus inside of me had a heartbeat, which it did. There was a heartbeat, which caused me to smile once again. There was a little heartbeat within me, and the song Heartbeat started to play in my mind, just like a heartbeat that's rising and falling, sinking and soaring. It keeps you alive. But the doctor's face spoke otherwise. He told me grimly that the source of my spotting was my baby growing within the fallopian tube, with not much room for growth. And every time the baby grew, he said, more blood flowed. It was only a matter of time, he said, that the tube would burst, causing fatal danger to myself. Well, that explained it. Everything clicked into place, and all at once I felt relieved to understand my why I was experiencing the pain and the spotting. The doctor continued and told me that if the baby wouldn't have a heartbeat, they'd be able to help the fetus pass with a simple injection. And of course, just send me home that very day. But because the baby had a heartbeat, they said, they'd have to remove it surgically, and they had to act fast. Of course, I tried reasoning with the doctor, like I mentioned earlier. Can I schedule surgery for tomorrow night? I promise I'll come back. I know this is important, but right now, see, there's a fast day going on tonight, a really holy day on the Jewish calendar, and see, my husband's out of town, my kids are at home, I kind of need to be there with them. Just a bunch of nonsense and jumble coming out of my mouth as I tried to reason with what was going on at that very moment. "No, ma'am," was the answer. "You do want to go home to your kids, right? This is an emergency, and we're getting you into the ER as soon as we can. Oh, and when was the last time you ate? There's no food from now until after surgery." My mind was working overtime. I was pregnant, but not for long. There was a heartbeat. Special, beautiful, gentle heartbeat. But it can't be sustained. I need to go home for Yom Kippur to be with my children. They're waiting for me. My husband is out of town and only I can be there for them. Emotions overwhelmed me all at once. I needed to be strong for myself, for my children, and for this baby. And yet I needed the support as well. This was a lot to process all on my own. I called my husband and I cried my tears freely. He was there with me, yet miles apart. And of course, nothing that he can do except listen and offer his own tears and words of support. The flood of emotions overcame me. So much was happening all at once. Clearly, it was not going according to any bit of scheduling or organizing on my part. God, of course, was orchestrating it all. Yet putting my emotions aside just for a moment, I sprung into action. I called my family. I asked them to host my children for Yom Kippur. I explained to my bubby that the kids have to be packed up and ready to leave. And then I spoke to my children. With some feigned strength, I explained to them that Ima as a little boo-boo that the doctors were going to fix. I needed to be in the hospital for Yom Kippur, and Bubby and Zadie were going to take good care of them. I promised to speak with them when the fast was over. I sent them hugs and kisses over the phone, and then I hung up. And with that, I was alone. I was alone with my thoughts, alone with my baby, connecting with the soul, the neshama within me, until its short time on earth was over. With my hand resting over my left fallopian tube, which started to burn in a lot of pain, I sang to the soul within me, and I said, "Come with me, little Neshamala, and let me hold you in my hand, and we'll fly away, you and I together, to a place above the land." Clearly, this was God's plan, and I decided to surrender. As the afternoon wore on and I was aware of my fellow Jews getting ready to eat their pre-fast meal, I went within. I basked in the task of housing my precious soul for this short period of time, and yet I mourned the fact that we would be separated so soon. Tears of pain, joy, motherly love, and separation, all mixed up and salted as one. At last, not long after Kol Nidre was recited in shuls across the city, I was prepped for surgery. And with my hands still rubbing my belly, I drifted off into induced sleep. My baby's neshama was returned to its maker. Coming out of anesthesia a while later, the first words I uttered were, "Where's my baby?" To which the nurse answered, "Upstairs." Maybe that's where they kept the removed fetuses, on another floor in the hospital, upstairs. But for me, her answer was clear. Upstairs, back at Hashem's throne. I spent post-op the next day resting in my hospital bed, yet feeling terribly empty and alone. Understanding that it was God's plan and God's will didn't take away the feelings of missing what could have been, but really wasn't meant to be. The moment Yom Kippur was over, my husband was on his first flight back home. We were reunited with tears of emotion, me still terribly in pain, yet happy at the same time to be alive and grateful that the doctors were able to save me in my situation. Yet the physical and intimate reunion of my husband and I still had to wait, because the doctors told me before I left the hospital, no sexual activity for another 4 weeks until my post-op appointment. My wait to immerse in the mikvah continued. It was hard. It was really hard. My husband and I missed each other so much, and we spoke about this challenge with each other. It just didn't seem possible. Living with each other in the same space and not being able to express our love for each other didn't seem humanly possible. At that time, we didn't have our intimate touch, and we didn't have our physical touch. You're probably thinking, Devorah, come on, you've gone overboard. Really? No touch at all? I get it. The Torah says no intimacy. But why not a casual touch? Why not a hug? Why not a peck on the cheek, especially for everything that you've gone through? I think you're a little bit extreme. But what is the reasoning? Why would a couple implement no touching during their time off of the month? See, the Torah understands that the sexual drive between couples is strong, and the Torah wants to keep it that way. It gave the couple an option then to create an extra barrier, much like someone who owns a swimming pool in their backyard and they got little kids in the house. As much as the parents will warn the children to be careful not to go in the pool without permission, there's no guarantee that the children are completely safe. So they put up a fence in order to protect them from anything going wrong. Again, you're probably like, Devorah, I get the swimming pool scenario, but how will casual touch turn into intimacy? Because, my friends, we're dealing with humans. You and I are humans and not angels. Humans kiss and want more. Humans hug and want more. Humans go for a walk and casually hold hands, and they want more. They want a longer touch, a more intimate touch. Judaism understands and teaches us that a simple touch can and many times lead to more. A second kiss, a longer hug. It doesn't take much for a human to be turned on, yes, man and woman alike, when the true attraction, the love of their life, is sitting right in front of them, is living in the same space. And as difficult as it is to refrain from touch for 12 days every month, it's even harder when it's over 6 weeks, when it turns into 7, 8, and 9 weeks. Yet my husband and I did know that eventually it was going to be over. We acknowledged God's bigger plans for us, and we remained faithful to what was unfolding. We remained faithful to God's master plan, and we remained faithful and committed to each other. I went into my post-op appointment with a light and happy heart, knowing that our reunion was imminent. That once the doctor gave me the green light, I can finally go to the mikveh and be reunited with my husband. And yet, once again, God had other plans. God was like, Devorah, you had some plans today? Well, that day, I got my period, which required me to wait an additional 12 days, bringing our time apart to a total of 3 months. See, it's not like one of us were on a business trip or we are away visiting family. We were very much living together while following a committed married ritual. So people ask me, come on, what did you do? You for sure cheated, right? Did you sneak in a hug or a kiss, even though you were following the laws of family purity? Cheating wasn't necessary, my friends, because we surrendered to a greater good, a greater power who knows what's best for us as a married couple. And we surrendered to it. As much as we knew that marital intimacy is the ultimate expression of love, we were also able to tap into other facets of a couple's relationship during that time. Practicing words of affirmation, acts of kindness, quality time together, going on walks with each other, what can I do to help you? Listening to each other's words, those are all important, equally as important as the physical, intimate connection of the couple. Thankfully, we got through it with support, with compassion, and love. It's moments like this where my husband and I look back in retrospect in awe of Judaism and the guidelines it sets out for us, in awe for the journey that we endured, with a goal of tapping into a better version of ourselves.
Thank you for joining me for today's episode. If you are loving the Spark by Hollywood podcast, kindly leave me a 5-star review on the platform that you're listening on. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at Sparked by Hollywood. That's where the conversations happen. That's where I give you extra content on all my episodes and where you can send me your feedback, your comments, and questions. And finally, in a world where we are all enamored by the spark of Hollywood and its celebrities, always remember your own spark that you carry within you that makes you the gift that the world needs to shine that much brighter. I'll catch you in the next episode.